Welcome back to the studio. This is going to be an interesting video for me because I've been getting a lot of requests, really good requests for things like how do you build your frames, how do you finish a painting, how do you wire the back. That to me is all pretty rote stuff, and old to me because I've been doing this for 10 years, but if someone finds that helpful, absolutely I will do that. So that's what we're going to be really looking at today, is not only how to build a canvas, or at least the way I build a canvas, all the way through to finishing a painting and wiring it for hanging, at least the way I do it. So I felt like this was going to be a really good example of all of these things because a video I just did recently, these are called the Three Sisters. This was the first one, the first pour I did. It's resin. And I did this on a canvas that I built. This is it's still taped, but it's a hardwood piece, and then I put some 1x2s in it, and I'll get to that in just a minute, to the building part. So that was the first one that I poured. This was a leftover canvas, a test canvas that I'd had for quite a long time. It's got several things that have happened to it. I ended up with extra resin, so I just happened to just grab this and use it. So it's, like I said, it's an actual canvas. Oh yeah, here's a big surprise. Kim forgot to tape the backside. Yeah, that never happens. So that's a little 10x10 canvas, but it still needs finishing as well, because what you're seeing here is some experimentation that I was doing with some alcohol inks. So that is not this. And if you see it up close, you can tell right away it doesn't match. It doesn't even look as cool as I would like it to. I love it when colors run over the edge. And I love that look of the drip and the extension of the colors. However, if you can get that on all four sides, fabulous. Seal it with resin, you've got a unicorn. You don't always get perfect sides, no matter what you do. So what a lot of artists, including me, do in that instance is we black edge our paintings. And it's, obviously in modern art, it's really kind of, you see it a lot. There are artists out there who like to black edge all of their paintings, and that's great. I kind of do it. It depends on the piece, and I'll tell you why. I understand why a lot of artists, especially modern artists, black edge their edges so that this image is the prime image. You're not, and it's being floated by black, so that's what you see. I personally do love the way that a good painting looks when you can get the really good edges with the color dripping over, but it's really hard sometimes to get uniformity and have it really, really look good on all four sides. So in my case, when that happens, what happens for me is that's when I black edge the sides. Because we've kind of got that going on with all three, that's what's going to help make this set a little more cohesive, because I'm going to be black edging all three of these. This one in particular, because it's on a canvas, just needs a little sanding, and of course, sanding, yeah. This one's, it's a tough one to sand canvas. This is resin. Yeah, there goes my neighbor mowing his lawn. Hi. Anyway, as I was saying, when I go to sand this, I have to be very careful, obviously, because there's canvas under this, and I could tear that up. So that's one thing I will be paying extra attention to. This is probably the one piece out of all three that needs the least amount of work. A little bit of sanding, black edge, and then one coat of resin, and this one will be done, plus the wiring we're going to do on the back. So that's number 2, sister. I have a lot of wood pieces in the studio like this, because I also do wood burning. So a lot of times I'll just grab a piece of wood and pour something on it. So it comes out to be this really nice pour by accident, and that's all it is a plank with a pour on it. That was kind of what this was here, except that I put the back on it beforehand. But this is one of those planks that I had in the studio, so I edged it with some 1x2. And the cool thing about this stuff is it can go, look, I taped that one. The good thing about 1x2s is I can use them kind of determined by how large my piece is. If I'm doing a 24x24 or larger, I will generally stand it up and do it like this on the back. So you get a nice profile out here. Or I should say here, this one you can see it better. You get this nice profile here. This obviously goes on the back. I'm just using this as an example. But on smaller pieces like this, where that would be way too deep of an edge for a small piece, I can cut it like this and put that on the back, so it's a little bit shorter profile, but you still get the nice frame back that you need to wire the piece to hang it. At least that's how I do it. I have a hard time hanging just flat planks. They bug me. So I will put it back on a piece like that. So in the case of sister number one here, I'm still looking into an idea that I have for this little piece here, because it's a piece where a piece of resin fell and it made a divot, which is actually I kind of like. And with the next covering on that, it's going to even that out, but I'm kind of toying with an idea of putting something in that. So other than that, here's a really good example of sides. Love that side. Gorgeous. The rest of them, not so much. Not great. But yeah, love that one. So also in getting these to be a little more cohesive, I'm going to black edge this. And that's too bad, but so that's what's going to happen to sister number one. And the one that's going to get the most work would be this little gal here. This one's my favorite, actually. This one was an accident because I had made too much resin. I was going to put some clear aside for another pour that I needed to do, and I ended up incorporating all of it because I was crazy for the colors. I mean, these colors are amazing. But when it came time to pour what was left, I didn't have any substrates ready. So I just grabbed one of my test boards that I use. This is press board, glue lamp, or I don't know if you call it glue lamp, press board. And I use it for test pours to check colors. But I fell in love with this, even though normally, and this is just my personal taste, normally I would not sell a piece done on this. It's just that's my preference. I like to pour on wood, even if it's just pieces I've got in the studio. I have a thing for full, the full deal. In this situation, though, I fell in love with the piece, so I'm going to try and finish this. And that's going to take some sanding, to get these little bastards off. And then what I'm going to do, this is also another one. This is a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch that I use for some smaller pieces that I don't want to be so far off the wall. So that's another dimension that I use. I've already cut the pieces for this one. So pretty much you'll see right there. But what these are, I used the 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch, basically 1 inch by 1 inch. So that's what's going to be on this, so that the height away from the wall that it raises to will be a lot more, it'll be a little bit closer to the other two. They're not all exactly the same, but this one would have been right against the wall and the other two would have been sticking out and it wouldn't have looked good. So we're going to finish this piece. So yes, sanding on this one. We're going to be gluing. We're going to be using F-clamps. These little guys here with this. After we glue and clamp for at least 30 minutes, and I'm going to show you all this as we go through the steps. I also use wood filler. There's some of my tools that I use for that. So we get wood filler in there. Then when I've done that, I go over it on top of that with an all-purpose joint compound. That gives me the peace of mind that every nook and cranny is filled. When that's all done, you tend to get a piece that looks like this. You might recognize this as an earlier pour, and I resined it. It's all done except for the finish, so that's what we're doing here. So what I did was, those same 1x1s that I used, that I'm going to be using on this canvas, that's what I used here. This was a really nice piece of wood, but obviously, like I said, I don't want to hang this against the wall. I want to finish it. I want it to be framed. So what I've done here is I've glued it, I've clamped it for at least 30 minutes, then I've gone through and added my wood filler to certain areas, I've nailed it, and then I filled that in with joint compound. So now all this needs is a really good sanding and then a really nice quick clear coat, and it's absolutely done, well, minus the wiring, and I'll show you that at the end. So that's really what we're doing with this piece. So I'm going to shut up now, other than to show you, when I sand, I don't mess around. This is where I employ this guy here. That's what I do all my sanding with, and yeah, have one of these handy. I only go outside to sand, and because I do a lot of projects kind of all running at the same time, I'll pick a day where I'll start stacking things in one part of the studio because I know I've got sanding day coming up, so I can just do them all at once, because it could be dirty work. But make sure you've got one of those even if you're outside, because these particles, you don't want to play with them. Okay, so as far as cutting these pieces goes, that's where we kind of get into an area. I took wood shop in high school. I have an uncle who's a carpenter. I have a really good friend who's a carpenter, and I've been around woodworking tools most of my life. So knowing how to use some of these tools it's not foreign to me. It's pretty easy. To some, they may not have any experience with these kinds of tools, or at least the one I'm about to bring up, and that is a compound miter saw. Some people call them chop saws. They are electrical, and you have to plug them in, and they have the big blade, and you bring them down, and it goes zzz, and it cuts these pieces. I was recently, it's been on my list for a while, but I was recently able to purchase one. I got a really good deal, actually. It was like $70, and they mailed it to me, free shipping. If you want, let me know. I'll put the link up for that, because I really like my new chop saw, because I'm able to do a bunch of cuts in a day, tape them up, remind myself what each cut is for, what each project is for, and then stack them so I can just move down the, conveyor belt. So that's where we're at now. As far as the compound miter saw goes, you need experience to use one of these. If you've never used one, I would not suggest buying one and just going to town with it. You need training. You can lose fingers. You can die. So talk to a friend, maybe a relative, someone who knows about these things, and kind of get some advice on that. Because I have experience with them, I'm in love with it, obviously. If you wanted to do it manual style, like by hand make canvases, and I have done that, you would want one of these babies. This is a miter saw. You put your wood through here, you put it at the angle you want it, and you saw. Matter of fact, if you want this one and you want to pay for the shipping, I will ship this to you, because not for me. It took, oh God, I think it was this one too. It might have been this one. I think it took over an hour to saw these pieces with this, for this. And people wonder why artists charge what we do for things. Yeah, so if you want that, let me know. I'm going with the electric version. Okay, we've got this piece sanded. Oh, can't really see her, can you? It's sister number 3. I actually didn't put this on it so that I could sand it. I put this on it because what I'm going to do now, that I've got it all even and nice, I used an 80 grit, took it right off. So what I'm going to do now is I want to finish this in some way, and I do have some gray paint that I think will, just be a nice back to that. So that's what I'm going to go do right now, before we do the framing. Okay. Let's mask off so I can actually breathe. Alrighty, so I've got all 3 sisters sanded. I got this one's back painted. I'm not going to paint the other ones, they're fine. And this is the wood that I pre-cut for this piece. Oh, it'd be helpful if I had wood glue, wouldn't it? Okay, we've got our wood glue. The first thing I do is I kind of go around and just mess with these just to make sure. Because some sides could be imperfect and slightly longer than others, and if I'm over by a little bit, I'm not worried too much, because I can sand a corner down. It's being short that sucks. I'm going to bring this back towards me for a sec just so I can double check this. I've got kind of a rough fit there. So basically that's what I'm going to do to, sticky there. So basically that's what I do to set it all up. So what I'm going to do after I kind of get a feel for these fitting the way I want them to, is I'm going to put a line of this all the way around it, put each piece down. It's hard to explain as I'm doing it, so I'm going to show you ahead of time. I'm going to be using, actually let me put this upside down. I'm going to be using these F-clamps. They are a handy little tool, because this wood glue that I use needs to set, and I need pressure on it for at least 30 minutes. So it's going to look like that. Once I get all 4 pieces on there, then I'm just going to sit it down and let it dry for at least 30 minutes. So we'll be back once that's done. What the hell, I got halfway through this part and realized I could just fast forward, so you could still see it happening. we're almost there. I have done the gluing, the nailing, the F-clamps. We've got a really good back on this now. A really good solid one. You can see some of the wood filler that I have in here because we're not quite done yet. We've got one more step. Now when I make a normal canvas like this one, it's not as much work as this one is because this has got little divots and stuff in it because, yeah, it's particle board. And I'm not a big fan of particle board because I use it for testing for colors because it's cheap. But every once in a while I get a nice painting out of it. So this is kind of the back roads, back way I have to do this to put it in a condition that I would sell it. So on this one, really all it needs is a little bit of joint compound to get in some of these joints. I've already sanded this, but there's still some little joints here and there. There's a piece of wood that came up in the corner. I want to straighten that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my, there so you can see it, my all-purpose joint compound. And really what it is it's just a kind of a putty that dries into a powder. I don't need it to be strong because I'm going to cover it with resin. I just need something to fill so that everything's flat and gorgeous and not stubby. Does that make sense? No stubbiness. So we're going to apply that to these. We're going to let them sit overnight and then we're going to sand them again. Then they should be ready. Of this you're going to see, but I'll try and show you. It's another reason why I taped this because it can get nasty. I hope you can see this. Just want to get that in the crevices, and I hope I'm doing a good job because I can't really see what I'm doing here. You can use a spackling tool like this. You can use a popsicle stick, anything that'll just get that stuff pushed down the grooves. It's kind of like, almost like frosting a cake. You just want to push everything down, make sure everything gets covered and filled. Doesn't matter what it looks like because when this dries, you're going to sand it anyway. And it sands pretty easily. So that gives you an idea of how we're starting out there. This is going to have to dry overnight. And then we're going to sand it again, and it should be ready for its black edge. Okay, and we're getting into the home stretch. I've gotten all the sanding done, well, most of it. I'll do a little finishing when we're done here, but I wanted to show you before I went on to the final steps kind of what the wood filler and the all-purpose joint compound do. Here's a good example. Okay, right in here. Anything that you see that's really dark, that's actually resin that's soaked in. So that's already making that substrate stronger by being there. That kind of brown that you see in some of these tan areas, that's a mixture of the pressboard itself and wood filler, this stuff right here. So if there were any more cracks beyond that, I needed something finer, and that's what the joint compound did. That's this white stuff here, which is that guy over there. So I've really got every nook and cranny, and it is soft. There's no bumps. It just feels, once I put the black on there, it looked like it was one piece. That's a good example of that over here too. Because before I did that painting, it was just a test board, and I already had blacked the edges before I even poured it. So once I poured it and I really liked it, because it's cool, I decided to, strengthen the substrate by putting a frame on the back of it, and I wanted it level, of course, for the black edge. So look how deep the grooves were in this one. I mean, that's pretty deep, but now completely flat. So I'm gonna get these black edged and painted, and then probably go over these two one more time. Thank God they're taped on the bottom. Could see those drips. Woof! So we're gonna do that. Then they'll be ready for one last layer of resin. And then I'm going to show you how to wire these babies so you can hang them on the wall. Oh, and before we go, I wanted to show you another thing. That's another thing I like about this joint compound, because see the resin under there? Don't make the greatest cameraman, but another thing about the joint compound, I need to get to a dark area so you can really see this. See how it's up on the edge there? It just flicks right off. It crumbles right off. So you can just wipe it off and it's clean. Sorry for the bad camera work, but that's another thing I like about the joint compound. It will do that off of dried pouring medium as well, because I've done that too. If you had a pouring. Another thing it does is it kind of shows me some little divots and stuff here in the edges. So that edge there is going to get a little sanding when I'm all done here. And then I'll paint it. So I just wanted to show you those. We'll get her painted up. We'll get them set up for the resin, and we'll be back. So welcome back to my studio. You'll have to excuse me. I'm suffering from a really bad head and chest cold right now. Thank God for Dayquil. So we are finally at the end of this. And what we're going to do is wire this today. But I'm going to go through a few things that I have here and the different ways that I wire my paintings. This is a little one. This is like, let's see, 8.5 by 12. So it's not a big one. And on these little ones, now the general rule of thumb that I use when I wire a painting is you want to be about 1/3 of the way down from the top. And this might be a new lesson to some of you. It might be something you already know, but this is for people who have not wired before and who are just getting into it. A good rule of thumb would be 1/3 way down. Now this is a small piece, so I'll show you the way that I adjust that. So for 1/3 of the way down, obviously since this is 12 inches, that would be 4 inches. But that would put our wire about right here. And that's a little too low for me, so I went up 1 inch. I went up to 3 inches. That might be too much, but you can judge this for yourself. You want enough room so that when you put a little slack in your wire, that it's not clear up to here. You don't want this in the way. But you want a little bit of slack, and you want it high enough that your picture doesn't hang off the wall like this. So you want it to be kind of up there. The other thing I do for pieces, especially I do nothing but wood these days, so whether it's a big piece or a little piece, I put stoppers right here. Now these are like stick-it bumpers. These ones here are bigger ones. These ones are for my big paintings. I hope you can see this because I have no way of knowing. These little ones here are the ones that I save for these little pieces. And I'll do that last. Okay, so what you're dealing with when you're going to wire a painting, if it's smaller, you're probably going to use eye hooks. That's these little things here. Hope you can see that. And if you're doing a bigger piece, like, say, I don't even know if you'll see this big boy, you'll be using D-hooks, or I should say D-rings. And these are D-rings. These are big D-rings for big paintings, and they'll hold a lot more weight. And there's a way to do that. I'll get towards that at the end of this video. So, okay, so we're kind of there. We're going to be using eye hooks for this one, as I said. And there's a few little tricks to this. There's a piece that I ordered that I don't have yet, but I can't wait till it gets here because I have a little hand. Where's it at? Where's my little screwdriver? Because I have this little guy. But the piece that I ordered that's coming is a piece that fits in here. And it's like a Y. It's like this. So you can put it in here and you can put it on an eye hook like this and screw it in. So you don't have to use your fingers. Or a piece of wood or a piece of metal sticking through it. We're going to do it old-fashioned way today. So I was kind of excited to be able to use my new tool today, but yeah, it's not here. So what we're going to do now, I've already marked these at 3 inches. And let me, I was going to try and get closer on this, but since I'm filming by myself, it's a little difficult. One thing I do to start the hole, that's why I have this nail here. I just want to start the hole to make the screwing in of the eye hook easier. Probably just got my head right in the camera there, but go as straight as you can. It's not a huge deal. Okay, same thing on the other side. Now I have a little work table over here that's got a gripper on it that I use for this kind of work. I usually don't try and do this freehand like this because it's a little difficult. With that I can put it on there, clamp it on, and I'm going to town. Okay, so now we're going to start this eye hook in here. And one thing that I like to do, where's my screwdriver? Or a nail, you can use a nail too or anything, but You want to get it started first. It's not too hard, it's just a little bit tedious. Okay, once it gets a little bit hard to turn for your fingers, you can use a screwdriver, you can use a nail. I think my Uncle Steve, the carpenter, taught me this when I was a kid. I just can't remember where I learned it. Probably, maybe him or my Grandpa Ed. You want to get it in there all the way. On my bigger pieces, the bigger pieces, you put this piece out here, I should say here. And what I like to do is put a little wood glue under this before I screw it in. I like it to be just that much stronger. But in this case, you got a small piece, so there's no extra gluing or anything you really have to do. And you know how anal I am about every little detail, so. All right, let me just make sure we're all the way in. I'm going to check the camera again real quick to see that we're where I want you to be. Okay, so I've got both of my cup hooks in, and I'm hoping you're close enough to see this, but when I started out doing this, I did watch a lot of YouTube videos years ago on how to wire paintings, and then I went to a friend of mine years later that's what he did for a living, was framing, and said that, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and the way that I'm doing it is just fine with him, and he thinks it's great, so I keep doing it. But I started out by telling myself a little story. That way I can remember which way to go at the beginning, because it's easy to forget, okay, do I go down first or up? But the way, and I don't even have kids, you would think I would when you hear this story, but the way the story works is the rabbit comes out of the hole, goes around the tree, and back down the hole, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. So for larger pieces, this is the stuff I use. This is soft strand. It's a really, really good hanging wire for my large pieces. It'll hold up to like 45 to 50 pounds. And I work on some large pieces. This is a little bit big for this. So I do have some actual picture wire that I'm going to use today. What you want to do, oh, wire cutters. I almost forgot wire cutters. Okay, so I've got my wire cutters, and what I'm going to do, the reason this is bobbing around like this is because I've got the camera sitting on the table, so if I move this, the camera moves, so I'll do my best to not do that. Okay, so what you're going to do first is don't cut any wire. You're going to input your first wire before you cut anything. So remember the story? The rabbit comes out of the hole, up around the tree, and then back down through the hole. So here's your rabbit. He's coming up through the hole, and you want, I don't know, about 4 inches. Do that. Okay, so the rabbit came up through the hole. He goes around the tree, make that tight, and go back down through the hole. And pull it tight. That's making a knot. I know my hand's in the way, but then you've got a good strong knot there. So the story, remember, was the rabbit comes up through the hole, around the tree, down through the hole. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes I go 4 or 5, but the 1, 2, 3 helps you remember that, to twist your wire. So we've got a really good twist on that. Let's see if I can get it closer for you. See that? And then we're going to trim that off. Don't trim the wrong side. Everyone's done that once or twice. So the reason why I told you not to take this apart is because we're going to measure off of the painting itself, or where the hook is. So that would be a straight across. We don't want that. We want it to be up here a little bit. So we're going to give it some lag. So from here, I'm going to go out about, I don't know, 5 inches just to be safe. This wire's not that expensive. Matter of fact, this big, the big spool I showed you of the soft strand, I bought that like 6 years ago, and look how much is still on it. So yeah, it's a good buy. I'll put that down in the description if you want the link to that, because it's good stuff. I use it a lot. Okay, so we're going to go back over here, and we're going to go, the rabbit's going to come up. Oh, this is, I don't like this wire. It came with a kit. Okay, so now we're up. The rabbit came out of the hole. We're going to pull this back just a little bit. You just want a little give. You don't want it to be, you know, up here. You don't want it to be tight. You just want it to give a little bit so that there's something that, so it'll come out far enough with these edges that it'll actually hang on your nail or your hanger or whatever you're using. So you want it to have a little bit of give to it. And then you can do that to it, crimp it, and it'll pretty much stay there. Okay, so there you go with that. So the rabbit came up out of the hole. He goes around the tree. And this thing's splitting on the end. This cold is killing me. Alright, and then back down through the hole. And each time you do a movement on this, you're going to pull it tight. This one's not knotting like I'd like it to, so I'm going to pull it a little tighter. Where's my... This is where pliers would come in handy if you've got a set. So what I'm going to do now is just take this and tighten it. And see that knot just tightened right up. Oh, wrong side? Right side. Okay, so you saw that tighten up there. Alright, trying to keep you focused here. Alright, so it went down through the hole, around the, or up through the hole, around the tree, and back down to the hole. So now we're going to do the 1, 2, 3. And with each turn I pull it. So 2, pull, 3, pull. Now for this little piece, that's plenty. You don't need any more turns than that. Like I said, on my big pieces, I will turn a lot more just to make sure that the strength is really there and that baby's not coming loose. Also with these little jagged edges, this is just a personal thing of mine. I crimp them because I don't want them to be all jaggedy and cutting people. And I do that on both sides. Okay. There's your wired piece. That's done. It's ready to sell. And I did it upside down. Just kidding. So I'm going to show you just a real quick look at the big one. I'm going to readjust the camera and just kind of show you how I get started on wiring the big one. It's the same process though. Once you get the D-rings on the big one, it's the same as the eye hooks. You wire it exactly the same. Except for maybe the placement here. And I'll get to that in just a second. Okay, so you might remember this guy. I love him. He's one of my favorites so far. He does need one more run, one more layer of resin, so I'm going to do a soft sand on this. I've already, if you saw this video, I decided to, well I didn't decide to, I normally do this but hadn't done it on this one, take my electric sander and just put a little edge, just a slight little edge on this so when my last layer of resin goes, it'll just go over really easily and you won't see weird edges, it'll be perfectly straight. So that's where we're at that, but we're talking about wiring today. So, when wiring a large piece like this, it's the same exact premise as what we just did with the small one. The only difference is the wire and the hardware. Instead of using an eye hook on this, because this is way too big for an eye hook and it would pull way too much, you want to use a D-ring. That's what that is. Let's see if you can see that. Yeah, that's a D-ring. And I've seen some people screw them on this way and run their wire like this. You can't do that. You'll mess up your wood and your framing with that. You need to install these on the edge here. And I know that seems weird because it would stick out, but that's what those little poker or those little bumpers are for that we're going to put down here. At the same time, when you wire a painting and you give it a little bit of slack, it's not going to be right dead set to the wall. So it's going to pull away just a little bit. That's what you want with this. And so that piece would be screwed in right there. Well, about a third of the way down, so probably right around there. So from side to side, then you would wire this, give it a little bit of pull up here, and you're done. The same exact premise with the rabbit comes out of the hole, around the tree, and down the hole, 1, 2, 3. But with these ones, I usually wrap, once I'm done, I'll wrap my wire around my wire like 5 or 6 times just to feel really safe. And if it's a really big piece, I'll even tape the wiring. That's about it. I can't believe we're finally at the end of this video. It took forever. You don't know this, but behind the scenes this took about 3 or 4 weeks to do because I did little pieces all at, little different times and kind of putting them together. So I am sick. I'm going to go back to bed, hide under my quilt, and edit this video so we can get it up today. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for clicking on those Amazon links. Thank you for clicking the like button, the subscribe button. All those things help me so much and keeps me being able to do this for you. and well for me. So, you have a great day, happy pouring, and I'll start planning my next one.